I remember growing up and wondering to myself, when am I going to be able to enjoy some beachfront property, a trip to the mountains, in those old school Volkswagen bullies, or buses as most of us know them by? Well, as time has gone on, I've gotten older and Volkswagen seems to be getting younger. This is the ID.Buzz. To people who weren't alive 60 years ago, the appearance of the Volkswagen ID.Buzz is probably that of a quirky minivan that looks modern enough to be firmly part of the 21st century world. It's also a nod, both stylistically and culturally, to the Volkswagen T1, also known officially or unofficially, depending on the market, as the Type 2 transporter, combi, or microbus. While the higher-ups at VW would prefer everyone to think that the ID.Buzz is simply the modern incarnation of the legendary Type 2, in reality, you couldn't be further from the truth. Or so we thought before we embarked on testing the electric minivan. During our limited time with the ID.Buzz, it was like traveling on the back of a dancing bear shooting fireworks, with every single bystander giving us more stares than they would to a wide-body Lamborghini. A lot of attention was given to the optional two-tone paint, but we're pretty sure that the gist of it was thanks to the downright lovable exterior design. Albeit, we did find a few people absolutely hating its stormtrooper helmet-like front end. That said, the ID.Buzz is only harking back to the Type 2 as far as design goes, because those who know their hippie vans remember that part of the original model's appeal was its cab-over-engine front end.
This drawing is well known throughout the buses family because this was the start and the beginning of building buses.
Why? Well, used either as a workhorse, vacation vehicle, or an actual house on wheels during the hippie era, the original bus is every bit of an icon of the automotive industry as the Porsche 911 or the Chevrolet Corvette. Oh, and just a little fun fact, it's called the Type 2 because it was actually the second type of Volkswagen ever built. The first was clearly the Beetle. Starting production back in 1949, the last versions of the Type 2 were built in 2013 in Brazil, thus marking the end of rear-engine Volkswagens, or at least until the current ID range of EVs was developed. This brings us to the ID.Buzz, which uses a slightly modified version of the battery electric MEB platform found in every single ID model in the Volkswagen lineup. In other words, even though it isn't powered by a tiny boxer engine, doesn't have rounded headlights or a cab-over design, the ID.Buzz is still very much reminiscent of the original idea behind the Type 2. We are talking about a charming people carrier that is looking to the past while having one foot firmly planted in the future. The model was initially launched in two versions, one called the ID.Buzz Cargo with 3 seats and more space for hauling stuff in the back, and one for carrying up to 5 passengers and quite a bit of luggage. Only available with a rear motor and rear-wheel drive, Volkswagen is also preparing a longer version with an extra motor for the front axle, making it all-wheel drive and worthy enough to be sold on the American market. We tested the passenger version in its 201 horsepower rear-wheel drive 5-seat iteration, meaning our expectations were set low from the start. Nobody would expect excellent driving dynamics or even a hint of sportiness from what is essentially a van that only has 201 horsepower to move over 2.5 metric tons in a driver-pleasing manner. As it turns out, we were partly wrong, mostly thanks to a few technicalities. Currently, the ID.Buzz is one of the most aerodynamic minivans on sale today, with a drag coefficient of only 0.29. The permanent magnet brushless motor only has 230 pound-feet of torque, but all that oomph is available from 0 RPM, like it is in all EVs, meaning that at lower and medium speeds, you really get pushed into your seat when flooring it. But Having only one forward gear and the weight of a fully loaded G-Wagon means that at higher speeds it will struggle to keep its velocity gains when you push the go fast pedal. In fact, we measured its 0 to 60 mph acceleration, and the model can go twice as fast from 0 to 30 than it can from 30 to 60. On top of it, the ID.Buzz has a top speed of 90 mph, so don't think of it as an Autobahn stormer. With that in mind, its gigantic 3-meter wheelbase and wide front and rear tracks translate into a surprisingly stable vehicle, especially for its size and weight. It's no go-kart, but the ID.Buzz outhandles its expectations, and apart from the high driving position, there isn't much to make you think that you're driving a van. Practicality-wise, it doesn't shake a stick at the Volkswagen T7, the nephew of the Type 2, but it's more practical and spacious than a similarly sized SUV. Another city driving selling point of the model is the rather small turning circle, which is almost identical to that of a compact hatchback like the VW Golf, making the ID.Buzz an almost perfect vehicle for urban errands, like taking your kids to school. Unfortunately, what makes this modern hippie van so great in the confined rules of the metropolitan area is also what makes it impractical outside the city and completely unlike the original Volkswagen Type 2. Sure, it has zero emissions and it's punchy at low city speeds because it's electric, but because it's electric, it depends on things like state of charge and charging infrastructure and even weather to function like an all-round vacation vehicle. These are all things that make no difference to the original Volkswagen Bus's attitude regarding long trips with a vehicle that could hold an entire family, their luggage, and their pets. We experienced this huge downside of the ID.Buzz by packing it with people and gear and taking it to the mountains in the middle of winter. We didn't remain stranded in the middle of nowhere, but the car was out of its comfort zone. During our trip to the mountains, our test drive consisted of a lot of country roads, highways, freezing rain, and low temperatures, which gave the car a range of almost 186 miles. Not great, not terrible, some might say. But if you live somewhere with a low count of public chargers, this version of the ID.Buzz kind of puts a leash on how far you can travel without planning your trips like a mathematician. The 82 kilowatt-hour battery only frees 77 kilowatt-hours for the model to use, which would normally translate to a WLTP range of 255 to 263 miles. The car has the interior space, the aerodynamics, and the handling of a long-distance family cruiser, but its means of propulsion relegates it to a completely different breed of vehicle that is best suited to the city, not for the outdoors, like its informal predecessors from the 60s and 70s. Another point that kind of restricts its long drive capabilities, apart from the otherwise okay range, is the fact that its 3 rear passengers will torment the driver on any trip that takes longer than they can handle. Why? Well, let's just say that once you're in your seat, there is simply nothing you can do for fun back there apart from looking at your phone or out the window. The rear sliding doors have fixed windows. There is no panoramic roof, and our test car didn't have any rear entertainment system apart from a set of retractable trays on the back of the front seats. The 2 front seats aren't that much better either, mainly because of some of the solutions that Volkswagen somehow decided on the interiors of its ID lineup. The infotainment is more complicated to use than a center console filled to the brim with buttons. The giant retractable cup holder leaves little room for larger bottles. And at night, you need a flashlight to locate the volume and heating buttons, which aren't buttons or knobs, but touch-sensitive sliders underneath the center touchscreen. Are all these downsides a deal breaker for some people? Probably, but not for all people, that's for sure. Even though it looks like it can cover vast distances in one go, it can't. It entices with the promise of off-grid living, but revolves around on-grid functionality. Yet, Volkswagen has taken the time to develop an EV tuned for the urban landscape, thus creating the perfect soccer mom car. By the time it reaches the US, the ID.Buzz will have a longer version with more seats, a bigger battery, and all-wheel drive. So, expect even cooler things from the reinvented hippie bus in the future.